We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.
Hello and welcome to Liberty Nation Radio, heard coast to coast on the Radio America Network from our flagship station in the nation's capital, WWRC in Washington, D.C. I am your host, Mark Angelides. On today's show, we are talking the Iron Dome, taxes and housing. Remember, this show is proudly sponsored by LibertyNation.com, where you can access podcasts, breaking news, analysis, and a range of biting and brilliant shows to whet your appetite for freedom and your fondness for the great American Constitution. Let's get started. America has its own Iron Dome system on the way. Is it fairy tales? Is it Star Wars? And will it be of any value if it can get made? We're very fortunate to have with us Liberty Nation's national security correspondent and former Deputy Undersecretary of Defense Controller, Dave Patterson. Thanks for being here, Dave.
Thank you, Mark. Always great to be with you.
So Donald Trump, he announced that America is going to have its own Iron Dome system, similar to what Israel has. Now, there's a whole wealth of questions here. And the first one has to be, Dave, is what is an Iron Dome and is it practical?
Well, for Israel, they've demonstrated, obviously, that it's practical. They have
Israel is much smaller than the United States.
I've noticed that. It's like Long Island.
Sure.
But the fact is that they have, if you wanted a prototype demonstration that's scalable, look at Israel.
Okay.
Israel has a high altitude, medium altitude, low altitude to cover the bases in terms of ballistic missiles, cruise missiles, and then you have your standard 122 millimeter missiles that that Hamas fires on a regular basis, and it's been very effective. Now, is it possible to scale that to cover the United States? The answer is yes. And it's going to take money. It's going to take some thought. But the president...
George Harrison agrees with you.
Yes. One of the great international geopolitical minds.
Absolutely.
But... Trump put out a executive order, and it's very thoughtful because it really does kind of cover he understands the extent to which he has committed himself, and some of the things that are particularly important are the fact that they need what is number 2 on his list of things to do, an acceleration of the deployment of hypersonic and ballistic tracking space sensor layer, which is absolutely critical. If you don't know something's coming, you can't shoot it down, right? I mean, that's pretty simple. But then one of the things that always tickles me is that, they can't help themselves. They have to go from the ridiculous to the sublime in terms of their descriptions. And so number 5 on his list is development and deployment of a custody layer of the proliferated warfighter space architecture.
So, Dave, let me jump in here. So, I speak English well, I think. Now, I know all of those words, and I understand that they make up part of a descriptive sentence. But in the words of Morecambe and Wise, when speaking to, I believe it was the composer Previn, and Previn says to Eric Morecambe, says that those are not the right notes. And he says, they are the right notes. They're just not necessarily in the right order. What does that actually mean, Dave?
Well, what they're talking about is it's a very simple concept. First of all, they're going to put a bunch of satellites up. They're going to have a network of satellites that allow for communications and integration of those communications so that if a missile is coming, it is easily tracked, and the tracking is communicated to the shooter. That's it. And but Mark, when I was in the Pentagon, one of the things I always said was that there are 3 words that you can guarantee will add 30% to the cost of any program, and those 3 words are net-centric, system of systems, and architecture. You have to have those words in order to have a really well-funded program.
George Orwell did this amazing essay on the English language and how people tend to use stock phrases because it actually shows a lack of thought when they're using these stock phrases. But here, the thought behind the use of these system of systems, net-centric and architecture, is not because they're displaying a lack of knowledge, but there's an ulterior motive that we want added fiscal levies for the use of these words.
Well, I always accused them of not actually knowing what they meant, and they used these words because they were so broad as to mean just about anything you want them to mean. But on a more serious note, this effort is going to be extraordinary and they're going to have naysayers who say, well, it can't be done. Well, it's actually demonstrated that it can be done. And not only that, but the United States does have the rudimentary elements to put together this system, this total Iron Dome for the U.S., if you will. You've got the Navy with its SM-3s, which are missiles that most missile cruisers and destroyers carry, that have been demonstrated to take out ballistic missiles, as they did when Iran shot ballistic missiles on toward Israel. And so you have a high altitude. We have the THAAD system. We have Patriot system. What we don't have is an integrated system.
Some might say that what you really need to do, Dave, is to make it a system of systems, perhaps with some architecture, and make it all net-centric.
Okay, now you've just tripled the cost.
So how does this work in practice then? So America has the munitions. It has the base level systems that would be responsive to the new, I guess, satellite systems that would need to be in place. Now, can whatever systems need to be in place for the satellites, can that be piggybacked onto existing satellites that the US already has?
Yes.
Okay. So it's not as though there needs to be 500 new satellites thrown into the air to make this, to get a start on this.
Well, they're in the process of filling out the network, and so there's going to be a large maze, if you will, of satellites that will do the tracking and fixing and identifying. We've had the capability to identify a ballistic missile launch at engine start,
okay,
because of the infrared signatures. But tracking a hypersonic missile is it's no easy feat. And what we've been really lacking is a really good system whereby you can identify, track, and ultimately destroy. We used to have the DO line, if you'll recall, which, although we took great confidence in, was probably not all that effective, except for bombers. And we know it's not effective on balloons, right?
Sure. We're actually, Dave, I want to carry on with this topic. We're going to come back after this short break, continuing this, and find out what it actually means for America. Don't go anywhere.
We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.